Hello everyone, welcome to the Viking Code School information session. My name is Erik Trautman and I'm the founder of Viking Code School, and we are on YouTube Live right now. So what this means is we're going to try and do this with live chat as well, so that you guys have a chance to ask any questions that you'd like. So basically what I'd like to cover today is essentially just give you guys a sense of what do we do here. What is Viking Code School about? What are the programs that we have? And how can you join? So essentially, Viking Code School is a fully online web development bootcamp that allows you to go from advanced beginner to job ready. And in fact, we actually take from zero to job ready through our prep work, which is designed to kind of get you up to the advanced beginner stage. And we're a mission-driven company. We have a mission to launch 1 million high-growth careers, and that's not an easy thing to do. And so we've been doing this for about 2.5 years now. We run 2 programs right now, one of which is an immersive program where you don't have to pay till you get a job for students who are in the US. Another is, and that's our flagship program, and another is our flex program, which allows you to take the same curriculum, the same course with the same support resources, just on your own time and at your own pace. And so that's designed more for people who are already employed, or students, or outside the U.S., or for whatever reason, someone who the immersive program is not necessarily a good fit for. So what I'll talk about today is I'll cover the differences in the formats of the 2 programs, and the things that are the same across the curriculum, because they both use the same curriculum. We'll talk about how to get involved, and then we'll kind of go from there. We'll talk about career stuff as well. If you're interested in providing questions, so what I'd like to do is feel free at any time to leave comments on the YouTube page. So we'll be tracking that. I have a little control center here that allows me to see what's going on. So please feel free to drop comments and questions, and I'll be happy to answer those as they come in. And but otherwise, I'll just kind of continue onwards, and we'll go from there. So basically, what is the immersive program? So the immersive program is one that we've been running for more than a year now. We're just gearing up for our 4th cohort in October. That's a program that's fully immersive. It's online, but it's 16 weeks of pure insanity, 80-hour plus weeks where you just dive all the way into code and you get immersed in that entire experience. And it takes you at a very, very aggressive pace, basically the most aggressive pace you can, to learn an extraordinary amount of material and get you out the other end and ready for a job and into a seat, basically. And so that's a program that there's an application process associated with it. It's an extraordinarily competitive program to get into, as you can imagine, especially because we offer students who are in the U.S. an opportunity for a deferred tuition plan, a deferred fee plan, which allows you to defer the payment of the course fee until you get a job. And so instead of charging like 20 grand up front, like a lot of these programs are 18 grand or 15 grand or whatever it is, you pay a deposit and then you're good until you get a job. And then it's basically a percentage of your first year salary payable over the first 6 months. And so that's designed to open up the program to anybody who's able to, obviously subject to the fact that you have to take time away from work and whatever else it is that you'd otherwise be spending your time on. But it is designed to open up the program to a much broader group of people, especially if you don't have 15 grand sitting in your back pocket and you maybe aren't able to pick up and drop yourself into a city like San Francisco, or you live in a market where your local in-person boot camp may be not as strong as you would hope. Our program is a 16-week all-in program. It's the best program out there. I might be biased, but it's a program where we cover over 1,200 hours of material, which is far more than most of these other programs cover. And that's because with a tuition model like this, we have to be damn sure that you're going to be ready for a job. So our goal with the program is to make sure that you're employable as either a back-end engineer or a front-end engineer, and of course that includes being a full-stack engineer. So we want to give you as many options as possible so that you have the strongest foundation to launch your career after you're done with the program. So basically the way that this looks in reality is we have an application process. Like I said, it's very competitive. It's geared around coding challenges. There's an interview associated with it where you'll have to do live coding, where we're basically assessing um, your aptitude, your motivation, and your communication skills. And so that's a program where we typically have a small number of students together, somewhere between 1 and 2 dozen students, with a large number of instructional staff on support. And basically, you spend the entire program either working as a big group or pair programming directly with other students the entire time. So it's a synchronous program. It's not a go at your own pace. You spend about 10 hours a day of synchronous time during the class, 5 days a week. And then there's typically between 2 and 4 hours of homework in the evenings, and then there's usually roughly a day's worth of work on the weekends too. So it really is all-consuming on every level, but it's totally worth it because it really is what you're doing is you're pulling the lever and you're saying I'm going all in on web development. Like I said, during the course of the program, a typical it's 16 weeks. It's broken up into two 8-week segments. We do essentially back end in the first segment and front end and final projects in the second segment. There's a 1-week break in the middle, which you're going to sorely need, and also we have a lot of stuff for you to do during that break, so it's sort of a break more than a real break. And during a typical day, what you do is that we have 3 sessions where you're meeting with your whole group, or at least large chunks of your group, working with either an instructor or a TA, doing demos, scrums, algorithms practice, and code review. So essentially doing whatever it takes to make sure that you guys are working properly, so that whatever you're building is on the right track. And then in the interim periods, you're paired up directly with one of your classmates via screen sharing and working on a project. And so we essentially use a flipped classroom model. So when you're done with a day of work, you get to, there's a reading assignment where you go in and again, like I said, you typically have between 2 and 4 hours of reading / watching demos and things like that in the evenings, so that you absorb as much material as you can, so that when we come in the next morning, you're loaded with questions, you're ready to go, and you can start building cool stuff. Because really, it's a build-first approach. We want to take the shortest distance between learning and building as possible, because really you learn by building. So that's what we want to focus on. So the program, it continues, it's like I said, it's 2 8-week segments. During this whole course, we're also, as I'll talk about in the curriculum section, going over all sorts of career-related stuff too. And then for up to 6 months at the end of the program, we're going to be supporting you during your job search. And that doesn't stop until either 6 months or you get a job. And thus far, it's been within that time window. So typically we have a number of students who actually get offers before the end of the program, because a lot of the hustling that we're doing starts before the end of the program, and so we've been very fortunate to have that as well. So the immersive program application process, the application process can generally take a fair bit of time. It's one that you want to get in on early. We close applications at least a month before the cohort starts, because we have prep work leading into the cohort that takes a long time. That's both the public-facing prep work, and we'll have you do the first several units of the core curriculum as well. That's a hands-on prep period during which we support you, and then of course at the end we have the career stuff. We have the career support as well. We do things like mock interviews. Like I said, every day we do algorithms practice, and there's a lot of customized support as well. Essentially, the goal being that we're going to be supporting you one-on-one, in terms of focusing your career search, your job search, so that you have a customized path, as opposed to just kind of throwing you out there to the wolves and saying, go get them. Because everyone's in a different geographical market, everyone's coming from a different experience level, and everyone has different assets. Some people are better at marketing themselves than others. Others are have a very specific type of background that we're at this point we're quite good at identifying and making sure that you have the right resources available to you. Then let's move on to the Flex program. The Flex program is one that we started in response to people coming to us and saying, like, the immersive program sounds great. Obviously, you have a lot of confidence in your program, but we want to take it and we still have a job. And so we said, great, let's figure this out. And so what we ended up doing was allowing these students to go through on a part-time basis, on a go-at-your-own-pace basis, while having access to us as instructors so that they could ask questions along the way. And so over time, what this has become, this is a program that's currently in public beta. So we've been running it for about 1.5 years. So we have a lot of experience running it. We're just up to the point where we're going to be ready to launch it soon. And it is a program that essentially you can choose between 3 tiers of support. We have a basic tier, a standard tier, and an accelerated tier right now. And basically the difference between them is that everyone on basic gets access to our community, they get access to our instructor office hours, they get access to essentially the basic tenets of support all through the community, and of course all the other members of the community too, which is our current students, future students, mentors, instructors, and alumni. And so if you ask a question on Slack, someone from one of these groups is going to answer you. If you want to access a more structured path to going through this program, what a lot of students opt to do is work with a mentor. And so your mentor is a professional member of the, he or she is a professional developer, and it's someone who you meet with once a week or 3 times a week, depending on the level of support that you're looking for. And during that, you'll generally do code review, and you'll ask questions, the kinds of questions you would ask of a professional developer. And so, when you're hitting tough conceptual hurdles, a lot of times those will be conceptual questions. That'll be best practices for code, things like that. As you get more towards the hiring end of the spectrum, that'll be things like going and exchanging your sessions for mock interviews, which is something that you're able to do. So that's essentially how those sessions work. There's kind of a matching process where we put you in touch with your mentor. You'll basically be with the same mentor for either the entire duration of the program, or at least as long as fits you and fits your mentor. And so those are the differences between the 3 tiers. Each of those is paid month to month, as opposed to the Immersive program, which is, like I said, there's a deferred fee option, and then there's also, for students who aren't eligible or would just prefer to pay up front, there is an upfront option as well. So the Flex program, as far as how do I get involved with the Flex program, this is a program that we want to make available to anyone who really has the motivation to take on the program, because it is go at your own pace. It's one that we believe that just about everyone is capable of finishing, although I do want to caution that this isn't a one-size-fits-all program. So it is challenging, and we will challenge you. But at the very least, it doesn't have quite the same level of pacing that the Immersive program has. So we've opened this up to anyone who's interested in it. We'll typically have a one-on-one session with you to answer any questions that you have about the program when when you do sign up for the program on our website, which is vikingcodeschool.com/flex. But essentially, anyone is welcome to join that program, and we'll support you at the level that you ultimately choose. So that's a program, as mentioned, it's a program that you can go at your own pace. So then the typical question is, how long does that take? So circling back to what I said before, the curriculum is tuned somewhere around 1,200 hours worth of work. And what does that mean? Who knows? Everyone asks. That's the rough number that we've tuned it into. That's about how long the Immersive students spend in it. And that's, plus or minus, it's going to be dependent on so many factors: your prior experience, your technical aptitude, the rate of continuous time that you spend with it, whether you work with a mentor, how often you get help. But it does make sense to just benchmark off of that. And in terms of how long does it typically take students, typically it's somewhere between 8 and 10 months, depending obviously a lot on how much time they put into it. And so on our website, you'll be able to find all sorts of things around, like, how long is it going to take me if I do it for 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week. Actually, we do not recommend 10 hours a week, but if I do it for 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week, like, what does it look like? And so, yeah, typically it's between 8 and 10 months. Let's see, so we have the Flex program going through the curriculum. Let me see, just double check if there are any questions. I don't believe there are. So let me talk about the curriculum and what actually gets covered. Although actually before I do that, just a note about the Flex program. One thing that I did mention I want to highlight is that if you are working with a mentor, feel free to you can trade those sessions for mock interviews as well. So in terms of the hiring support, that's something we do offer along the way with Flex students as well. And that level of hiring support varies depending on which tier you're in. And you are able to bounce between tiers to a certain degree, as long as we have a certain degree of advance notice. You can totally do that, not a problem. And so I just wanted to highlight that. As far as the curriculum, what do we cover? What are we teaching? Basically, we're teaching you everything you need to be a professional web developer in Silicon Valley. And so Silicon Valley being held up as sort of a gold standard right now of technical development. It's pushing the boundaries of cutting edge technologies, and then the rest of the world is very much in line with that right now too. So that's us sort of staking our flag in the sand and saying, this is the goal that we want you to get to, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get you there. For our part, the technologies that we currently use, we use Ruby and JavaScript. Those are the cores. Everything else is sort of on top of that. So Ruby is a great backend scripting language. It's used in the Ruby on Rails framework, which we teach. And JavaScript is the pervasive language of the world right now because it's in the browser by default. And for us, we also teach, on top of it, we teach a framework called Angular. And AngularJS is one of the most popular frameworks out there. It's also a really good foundation for whatever else it is that you want to learn beyond that, because there are a million JavaScript frameworks these days, and it's pretty easy to switch between them. So those are the core technologies that we're teaching, but along the way we're also going to start off with a sense of context. So we have free prep work, which is vikingcodeschool.com/prep. Highly recommend you check that out. That also gives you a good sense of how we think and how we operate and how we teach. That's prep work that right now is broken up into 4 courses. We have a course on basically how does the web work and what am I doing, learn about Git, learn about web development, and learn about the command line. Next course is about design, which is something you don't typically see, and because we think that it's really important that you have a sense of context for how do you operate on a team. That's really the difference between being a code monkey and being an engineer who can think. And part of that is actually understand design, understand the principles, the high-level principles of design. Not be a designer, but understand enough about it to make decisions about, or at least know why they're making decisions about placement of items on the page, and it also helps you a lot with your personal projects on the side. Third course is about engineering. Obviously, you want to become a software engineer. You don't get there just by learning how to code. You also need to understand the fundamental principles of engineering. How do you solve problems? How do you work on a team with engineers? What's the mindset and what's the process of being an engineer? And that's something that should hopefully give you a good sense of what it is like to work on those teams. Finally, we teach you how to code, and code is why we're here. But again, the contextual items are incredibly important as well, and that's something that we really highly value too. So why are you learning how to code? How do you learn how to code? So we'll teach, during the prep work, we'll teach you basics of HTML and CSS and the basics of Ruby, and basically those become on-ramps into the core curriculum material which follows after it. So core curriculum material, as mentioned, just on a little bit higher depth, we'll start out with Ruby. We'll teach you object orientation. We'll teach you how to test your code using test-driven development. We'll teach you how to solve problems using data structures and algorithms. Basically, the goal with that is data structures and algorithms to the degree that you become a very good interviewer. You can solve these problems, and also helps you become a better engineer because it allows you to think more critically about how your code is running and the level of efficiency that you're able to achieve. Beyond that, we'll take you into the web. We'll teach you how to ping APIs, how to pull data from websites with web scrapers, how to build your own websites using the Sinatra framework, and then finally we'll start getting into Rails. On the way into Rails, we'll talk about databases, data being one of the most important things that you could possibly learn, because every major web app is about data. Its core, its entire value is typically couched in its data. And so that's something that we really focus a lot on. Make sure that you really have a good sense of how do I take a big hairy project and break it down into very clear, distinct tables in a database, and then get comfortable with how to query those tables and how to get complex information from those tables. So at that point, once you know that, building Rails on top of it's actually quite straightforward. It does take a lot of time to teach the ins and outs of Rails, but ultimately it's not out of reach by any means. If you have a good foundation in data, you can learn Rails and you'll be fine. So the rest of the first half is all about Rails, and then we get to the end of Rails, and congratulations, you now have backend skills. In the front end section, we'll talk about JavaScript. And JavaScript, our goal is to get you as good with JavaScript as you were with Ruby. And luckily, the learning curve is a little bit shorter in general because you already picked up one language. It's also a little bit longer because JavaScript takes a little bit longer to figure out. So combined, we spend about the same amount of time diving really deep into JavaScript, teasing apart the language. And the cool thing is there are enough differences between those two languages that it really does give you a good sense of how our languages themselves built. Because you can't really figure out what you're taking for granted unless you see another tool that doesn't have some of the things as your first tool. And from that sense, learning both of those languages is really valuable. And it gives you two great sets of comparison. And then the next thing that's true also is moving into Angular, whereas on the back end you have a really good framework, an MVC framework, which is Rails. On the front end now we have an MV Star framework, which is Angular, and you can really compare and contrast the differences between those approaches and the way that those two frameworks actually communicate with one on top of the other. And so that's something that we really teach you, dive pretty deeply into, and have you guys build all sorts of really interesting projects along the way. So in terms of projects, the typical breakdown of content is we'll have you read a bunch of lessons, we'll have you view a bunch of demos, and then you build. Again, it's build, build, build as much as possible. If you build more than 80 custom projects from the ground up, a number of those are large-scale portfolio-size pieces. And then at the very end of the course, we have a final project. And your final project is the real meat of everything. That's the only project that we, regardless of which program you're taking, we require you to work with another partner, at least one, because it's designed to be a team project where you take, essentially, it'll be the most complicated thing you've ever built. Whatever, if it's not, then you need to pick a better project, because it really is designed to be the capstone project that you have on your resume, the capstone project that you sit down and you impress people by showing them that you've built it, not just alone, but with a team of people, so that you can show them that you've learned an incredible amount of technology, you've applied it, and you've shipped code, and finally you've actually been able to work on a team. So you have those war stories about, like, what went wrong, how do you collaborate with other developers, and also you'll feel a lot more comfortable with just sliding into a team where these developers are working using all the tools that you've just used, and you can feel a lot more comfortable day one starting to try and add value, as opposed to again being sort of a scared rabbit who doesn't necessarily understand what's going on in a real development environment. So the final projects, you're taking a project from zero to mock-up to user stories to prioritization of those stories to building out a couple of agile sprints, and then finally demoing to the whole community. So it really is a full life cycle project, and we sort of, as a whole community, we have those pop up periodically as students are going into them and demoing them. So it's really cool to see what all the students are able to build along the way. Finally, we talk about getting hired. Getting hired is something that, even though I'm talking about it at the end, it is something that occurs in a parallel track alongside all the rest of the content, because of course getting hired is not a point at the end, it's a line along the way. It means that you need to start doing things immediately. The sooner you start doing certain things, the better your online vapor trail looks, the more filled out you are as a human when people Google you, things like that. We talk all about it in the course, and also we talk about, we really try to educate you about not just this sort of like roses and sunshine, 10 things you can do to get hired style nonsense about the hiring market, but really what does it mean to be coming from a non-traditional background and wanting to break down the door and get in there? And how do you make your resume not just sort of fall on the floor in the front, but how do you actually go in the side door and get people to pay attention and notice you? And that's something that is sort of a unique problem for the types of students who we typically serve, and so we've gotten quite good at serving that problem. So all along the way, we're talking about hiring stuff, and then at the end of the course, again, depending exactly on the program, there's a number of things around like mock interviews and more one-on-one support for your job search process. But that's more on the program level than it is on the curriculum level. So again, the real focus is you and one-on-one as much as possible, and making sure that your search is working out effectively, and less on this idea of sort of building out a local hiring network in every city in the U.S., which you can sort of hand someone a fish, or you can teach them how to fish, and we'd much prefer to teach you how to fish. So that covers the Immersive program, that covers the Flex program, that covers the curriculum. And as far as getting involved, what do you want to do? How do you actually start to sort of step into this? Well, basically, if you want to do the Immersive program, you have to apply, and so you would go to vikingcodeschool.com/apply. If you want to do the Flex program, you also have to sign up. It's not quite the same application process, but you do obviously have to drop your information on the page. That's vikingcodeschool.com/flex. If you're not really sure, if you want to test drive us, give us a shot. We have lots of students who come in through our prep work, and our prep work is vikingcodeschool.com/prep. Totally free. You don't even have to sign up. You just show up and learn. And that should give you a good sense of just the way that we approach explaining things, because one thing that we clearly do better than just about anyone else out there is plain English, and that's because I and the other members of the team here are plain English types of people. We're not really interested in trying to prove that we're smarter than you by explaining things in ways that you can't understand. It's quite the opposite. The reason we do this is because we feel like there are a lot of tools out there that do a really bad job of explaining things. Good engineers are not good teachers by definition. And so it's very hard to find engineers who overlap as good teachers, and so we really try to focus on teaching well, and I think that's something that you'll find if you take a look at our prep work. And so finally, if you have any unresolved questions, it doesn't look like there are any questions out there right now. If you have any unresolved questions, please reach out, vikingcodeschool.com/flex, And sorry, hello@vikingcodeschool.com. If you have any questions, feel free to do so. Be happy to work with you, happy to chat. And otherwise, I really hope that you find what you're looking for. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you for going along so far. And I hope you have a great morning, day, or night.